أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما نافعا اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to the Reflections on the Risale-i Nur by Bediuzzaman Said Nursi podcast series. This is Mustafa Tuna. You can listen to the episodes of this series wherever you listen to your podcasts or at the website www.reflections-rn.org. A rough translation of the text we will be studying in this episode, inshallah, will be posted at this website too. You can go to the podcasts, then the words, then the 14th word, and scroll down to the relevant section. And as that also indicates, we are reading the 14th word. We are continuing to read the 14th word in this episode, inshallah. The 14th word is, it has two main sections. The first section is divided into 4 parts. And in these parts, Ustad Nursi takes some verses from the Quran, verses the meaning of which may be somewhat difficult to comprehend, grasp for minds that are familiar with and stuck in the mechanics of the world. Some verses that have been the subject of some controversies, perhaps. He doesn't tell us what the controversy is. That is not Ustad Nursi's style. He never, tells you, so, people say this and this is why they are wrong and this is what the truth. He just tells you what the truth is. And in this way, you are not exposed to the falsehood and you are inoculated against falsehood in case it comes on your way down the road. So this is a very conscientious approach to training the lower soul and to improving us spiritually. Alhamdulillah. So we read the first 3 parts of these. We went through the first 3 sets of verses. Inshallah, we have the 4th and the 5th left. And then the second section is a collection of different pieces. We will talk about it when we come to there, inshallah. So we will continue from the 4th set of verses. Bismillah. إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون وما أمر الساعة إلا كلمح البصر ونحن أقرب إليه من حبل الوريد تعرج الملائكة والروح إليه في يوم كان مقداره 50,000 سنة gibi ayetlerin ifade ettikleri hakikati ulviyesine ki kadir mutlak o derece suhulet ve süratle ve mualecesiz ve mübaşeretsiz eşyayı halk eder ki yalnız sırf bir emir ile icat eder gibi görünüyor, fehmediliyor. Now, as we said, Ustad Nursi begins these parts with a set of verses, and here we read these 4 phrases, 4 sections from 4 verses. And I'm going to read them again. 4th, for example, the lofty reality that verses such as Bismillah, إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون. When he wills something to be, his way is to say be and it is. So this is of course one of the most famous verses in the Quran, right? Kun fayakun. God says be and it is. That is how God creates. There is nothing else that is needed. And this is from chapter 36, verse 82. The next verse is وَمَا أَمْرُ السَّاعَةِ إِلَّا كَلَمْحِ الْبَصَرِ the coming of the hour of judgment is like the blink of an eye. This is verse 16, chapter 16, verse 77. Then, وَنَحْنُ أَقْرَبُ إِلَيْهِ مِنْ حَبْلِ الْوَرِيدِ. We are close to him than his jugular vein. Close to the, closer to him, like closer to the human being. This is chapter 50, verse 16. Then, تَعْرُجُ الْمَلَائِكَةُ وَالرُّوحُ إِلَيْهِ فِي يَوْمٍ كَانَ مِقْدَارُهُ 50,000 سَنَةً. By which the angels and the Spirit ascend to him on a day whose length is 50,000 years. By which the angels and the Spirit ascend to him meaning God, on a day whose length is 50,000 years. So we can sort of understand what Ustad Nursi is getting to with these verses, right? One verse says that he is closer to us than our jugular vein, and then the other verse says that the angels and the Spirit, the most reliable narration about this is it stands for Jibril alayhi salam, Gabriel. They ascend to him on a day whose length is 50,000 years. It takes 50,000 years to ascend to him. So, as these verses express, that is, the absolutely all-powerful one creates things with such ease and rapidity, speed, and without endeavor or physical engagement that it seems like he is bringing them into existence with a command alone. It is understood as such. Hem o saniye kadir nihayet derecede masnuata karib olduğu halde masnuat nihayet derecede ondan baittir. So Ustad Nursi is continuing to explain what these verses mean. And while that all-powerful, artful maker is utmostly close to the artifacts are utmostly far from him. And here, artifact is anything that God has created, and he creates with art, artfully, right? So he is the Sani, he is the maker, and then the things that he creates are masnu'at. So he is utmostly close to the artifacts, to the things that he creates, to everything. But the artifacts, the things that he creates, are utmostly far from him. What does that mean? How can I be close to you, but you be far away from me? What does that mean? Hem nihayetsiz kibriyasıyla beraber gayet cüz'i ve hakir umuru dahi ehemmiyetle tanzim ve hüsn sanattan hariç bırakmıyor. And while he has infinite grandeur, he does not leave even the most particular and lowly affairs without attentive organization and beautifully excellent artistry. This is something, all of them are, but this is especially something that some of the philosophers, thinkers really tripped. They think that because of his greatness, God does not get involved and should not get involved in small affairs. They think of God's greatness the way they think of the greatness of a human worldly king. But it is not like that. We will try to understand. We will try to understand what this means too. İşte bu hakikati Kur'aniyenin vücuduna, mevcudatta meşhud, suhulet-i mutlaka içinde intizam-ı ekmel şehadet ettiği gibi, gelecek temsil dahi onun sırrı hikmetini gösterir. Mesela وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْعَلَى Sani-i Zülcelal'in Esma-i Hüsnasından Nur isminin bir kesif aynesi hükmünde olan güneşin emri Rabbani ve tesiri ilahi ile mazhar olduğu vazifeler şu hakikati fehme takrib eder. Şöyle ki, thus, as the most perfect orderliness within absolute ease that is observed among existent beings testifies. Most perfect orderliness within absolute ease that is observed among existent beings. Most perfect orderliness. There is an amazing order working everywhere in the cosmos. Now sometimes, they call an aspect of this ecology, right? But think about how the planets are are moving around, going around, circumambulating the sun. Think about how the Earth rotates around itself with an angle to its axis that is 27.3 or something like that. I can't remember now exactly. That is so precise that the way that angle interacts with the way the rays of the sun interacts with the surface of the earth, because of that angle, gives us the seasons and the perfect order of life that is on this earth. Yet, I mean, when you think of something like this, so tremendous, massive objects functioning in such orderly fashion, yet it all looks like it's easy. It looks so easy that we start to call it natural. This is happening, yeah, it's natural. That's happening, yeah, it's natural. It's happening because it's natural. Natural, like, started to imply in our language, like, yeah, it's nothing. No. Imagine how massive the earth is. Imagine how massive all the other planets are. Imagine how massive the sun is. Imagine how massive the galaxy is. Imagine how massive, all galaxies put together is. Imagine how massive the cosmos is. Imagine how everything is relating to one another and holding one another in check and fulfilling its function in the entire cosmos as due. But it looks like it is being done with absolute ease. This is, if you were to look at it with our human standards, it would look incredible. It does look incredible, right? So there are two options. Either this is incredible, it is miraculous, or it is like all a mirage, or there is a power that is dealing with it, and that power is endless. It is so powerful that all of this is easy before it, right? Thus, as the most perfect orderliness within absolute ease that is observed among existent beings testifies to the existence of this Quranic reality, so does the following representation show the secret in its wisdom. So here we are not establishing this reality. We are not establishing the reality that whoever is behind this, whoever is creating and sustaining and disposing this, right, is absolutely powerful, is close to it while we are far from it, right? He says be and it is that easy for him, etc., etc. We are not establishing that here. That is established by looking at the cosmos, right? Now, the following representation then shows the secret in its wisdom, i.e., how can we conceptualize this? How can we understand this? For instance, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى, and this is a verse, a phrase from the Quran. It means something along the lines of, and to God belongs the highest similitudes or the highest attributes, right? When we use an example from our human world or from the worldly realm to explain something that relates to God, we precede it with this verse to indicate that what we are saying is, in order to bring this closer to our understanding, it does not give a complete description of God. Right? We cannot do it. We cannot comprehend God as God is. Right? But we can bring those concepts closer to our understanding. We can get to know about God. Right? So that's why he says this phrase, وَلِلَّهِ الْمَثَلُ الْأَعْلَى. This indicates that he is going to talk about God. He is going to help us understand something about God by giving examples from this world, but he does not mean these examples to become measures for us to understand God's majesty, God's beauty, God's perfection. They are simply to help us get to know our Lord to the extent that it is possible by our human standards. The duties that appear as a result of lordly command and divine subjugation on the Son, right? We are going to think about the Son. The duties that appear as a result of lordly command and divine subjugation. God has subjugated the Son as he has subjugated everything in the creation to his command, and he commands certain things, and the result of the outcome of the Son's fulfillment of those commands are these duties that appear on it. For instance, the sun gives light, the sun gives heat, the sun, its magnetism, its gravity holds the planets on a certain path, etc., etc. The duties that appear as a result of lordly command and divine subjugation on the sun, which is in effect like a dense mirror of the name of light among the beautiful names of the majestic artful maker. Right? The sun, according to Ustad Nursi's description here, is a dense mirror. Why dense? Because it is, substantive, it has substance. And it manifests something. What does it manifest? It manifests the name, the light, and Nur. God is the light. And when we say this, we do not mean that God is light the way we understand light in this cosmos as photons moving through space. No, obviously God is not photons. But light is that which makes what is invisible, which is not apparent, visible, apparent when applied on it, when projected on it. Right? So one aspect of this, one manifestation of this in the cosmos that we live is the light as we understand it. But the source is God, as he is the source of everything in the creation. Right? Everything in the creation is the manifestation of God's creative power, and that creative power manifests his names and attributes, which is in effect like a dense mirror of the name of light among the beautiful names of the majestic artful maker. Right? So the sun, the duties that appear on the sun render this reality more understandable. What is the reality? It is what we just talked about. Right? God is closer to everything. Everything is far away from God. God is so powerful that everything happens in such orderliness, with such ease. He says be and it is. We are trying to understand these realities. This is how. Güneş ulviyetiyle beraber bütün şeffaf ve parlak şeylere nihayet derecede yakın, belki onların zatlarından onlara daha yakın olduğu, cilvesiyle ve timsaliyle ve tasarrufa benzer çok cihetlerle onları müteessir ettiği halde, o şeffaf şeyler ise binler sene ondan uzaktırlar. Onu hiçbir vecih ile müteessir edemezler, kurbiyet dava edemezler. So this is the example we are giving, right? In this world, in this cosmos, we see the sun, we see how the sun functions. While the sun, together with its loftiness, is utmostly close to all transparent and shiny objects, while in fact it is closer than their essences, and it influences them through its reflection and similitude, and in many ways that are like disposal. Those transparent things are far from it by thousands of years. They cannot influence it in any way and claim closeness. Let's try to understand this better. While the sun, together with its loftiness. Now, if you were to, look at the cosmos from outside without any understanding of what is going on this earth, and we, came a bit closer and saw the sun and saw the earth, right? The sun is so big, so massive, so majestic that compared to these little tiny balls that are circumambulating it, moving around it, it is really lofty. It would be the thing that would attract our attention right away, right? But together with its loftiness, it is utmostly close to all transparent and shiny objects. Is it? Yes. Now move to the face of the earth and you will see the sun everywhere, manifesting on the face of the ocean and all the way down to little water particles, snow crystals, tiny mirrors, broken pieces of glass. Any transparent and shiny object, you will see the sun on their face. It is so big, but you will see it on their face. It is close to them. It is so close to them that it is closer than their essences, in the sense that it moves through them. If they are transparent objects, the sun enters their bodies, permeates their bodies, goes through them, right? And it influences them through its reflection and similitude. I mean, it doesn't always have to be transparent or shiny objects. Like the leaves on trees, for instance, are also mirrors of the sun. It's only that they absorb all colors and reflect only the green color. A mirror reflects all colors that fall onto it from the spectrum of the light. The leaves reflect only the green and absorb the others, but they do reflect the green. Oranges hanging on those trees reflect the orange color and absorb the others, so they do reflect the orange. Right? They are also reflecting. And in many ways, they are like disposal. So in many ways that are like disposal, meaning that are like transactions, that are like disposing something, that are like doing something, such as we thought about those leaves, like the light that comes from the sun fulfills a very important function in the process of photosynthesis. The sun that comes from the light that comes from the sun fulfills a very important function in the process of our sight, right? Those transparent things are far from it by thousands of years. So while it is so close, and while it is affecting them in many ways, right, influencing them in many ways through its reflection and similitude and actions that are like disposal, those transparent things are far from it by thousands of years, right? If I were to try to go to the sun, let's assume it is possible. I can just keep moving whichever direction I want to, but at my human pace. It would take me thousands of years, while the sunlight comes to me in 8 minutes, as if it is coming immediately. They cannot influence it in any way and claim closeness. So I, this object on the face of the earth, cannot influence the sun. I cannot reach the sun. I cannot even imagine reaching the sun. I cannot influence the sun. I cannot move the sun left or right. I cannot slow the sun. I cannot accelerate the sun. I cannot do anything to the sun. I mean, there might come a point in human history that we might perhaps have some kind of technology that allows us to go all the way to the sun and do something. We are not there. This is an example. This is a representation. Stick to the meaning that benefits us, right? Right now, there are actually these space probes that are getting close to the sun, but they're expected to melt when they come too close. So, do we understand that the sun is close to us because it can reach all the way to us with its rays? It can affect, influence us. It can do things on us. It can go through us. But we are so far away from the sun. All these objects on earth are so far away from sun. They cannot do anything to the sun. They cannot even imagine doing it. If they were given the ability to move in whichever direction they wanted to, it would take them thousands of years to reach the sun. The sun is close to them. They are far away from the sun. Do we understand this matter? Do we understand this concept? Of course we do, because it is something that we see all the time, and it makes complete sense to us. God has given us the ability, the skills, the faculties that make us able to understand this concept. Okay. Then we can use that understanding, that pattern of thought, that cognitive pattern in our mind that we now have to understand something else. But we will come to it. Hem o güneş her şeffaf zerreye, hatta ziyası nereye girmişse orada hazır ve nazır gibi olduğu, o zerrenin kabiliyet ve rengine göre güneşin aksi ve bir nevi timsali görünmesiyle anlaşılır. Moreover, it is understood from the appearance of the sun's reflection and some type of its similitude in every transparent particle, according to the capacity and color of that particle, and in wherever its light enters, that as if the sun is present and looking. Right? It is as if the sun is present and looking wherever we turn, because it is wherever we turn during daylight. We look at the rosebud, the sun is there. The rosebud has absorbed all the other colors, but it is reflecting the red light, and that red light is reflecting from the light of the sun. The sun is on the rosebud, in the rosebud. We look at the face of the ocean, the sun is there. We see it green and blue. Well, all other light waves are absorbed, and that is what is being reflected. And in some cases, sometimes when the angle is right, we can even see the similitude of the sun on the face of the ocean. It is there. We look at our fingertips, and the sun is there. It is as if the sun is looking at us from everywhere. Anything that we see, again, this is of course during daylight, anything we see is reflecting the sun's light, and therefore it is as if the sun is there and looking at us. Hem güneşin azameti nuraniyeti derecesinde ihatası nüfuzu ziyadeleşir. Nuraniyet azametindendir ki en küçük ufak şeyler ondan gizlenip kaçamazlar. Moreover, the encompassment and pervasiveness of the sun increases proportionate to the tremendousness of its luminosity. Very early in the day, for instance, when the sun has not risen yet, but its light is illuminating the sky, right? Things are kind of dark, kind of light. You can see things, but you can see them as shadows. You cannot fully see them, right? But as the sun moves, comes to the top, and now its light is directly encompassing everything, covering everything, and pervading through everything, right? The encompassment and pervasiveness of the sun increases proportionate to the tremendousness of its luminosity. When its light is at the strongest, because it is coming most directly to us, and there is much less barriers between us. The atmosphere that it is traveling through is much thinner, right? Proportion to the tremendousness of its luminosity, the encompassment and pervasiveness of the sun increases. We have much less shadows now, and nothing can escape. Even if you are in the shade, right, the sun will be affecting you. Sometimes you stand in the shade, but the sun is so bright that your eyes are still dazed. Not even the smallest tiny things can hide and escape from it due to the tremendousness of luminosity, right? Luminosity is a property then. And when something has this property, when the sun manifests, reveals itself with this property, even the tiny things cannot escape from its encompassment. The mountain, right, is included in that. You can see the mountain. The sun encompasses the mountain. The sun illuminates the mountain. The sun heats the mountain, etc., etc. But the sun does not say, well, the ant is too tiny. It's not worth. I'm not going to do it. No, it doesn't take away from the sun's encompassment and pervasiveness that it manifests itself, it reveals its light on the end too. So we understood this cognitive pattern, this notion too, right? Demek azameti kibriyası cüz'i ve ufak şeyleri nuraniyet sırrıyla harece atmak değil, bilakis daire-i ihatasını alıyor. In that case, with the secret of luminosity, the tremendousness of its grandeur, the sun's grandeur, does not cast particular and small things out, but to the contrary, takes them into the circle of its encompassment. Right? A human sultan may say, well, this is beneath me. I'm not going to deal with those poor human beings. I'm going to deal with my noble servants and let my noble servants in turn deal with them. Well, this is not only because the sultan is higher, loftier, more elevated, but also because it takes away from his time and energy and assets to deal with those small things, small people or small things, right? It doesn't take away from the light of the sun to shine onto the ant. It doesn't take away from the grandeur and tremendousness and luminosity and capacity of the sun to shine on the small as well as the big. It shines on the small and the big, and it doesn't take away anything from it because it is great. With the secret of luminosity, right? With this property that Ustad Nursi in this context calls luminosity. It encompasses everything. It has this ability, this property to encompass everything, that to take everything into the circle of its encompassment. Its grandeur does not entail throwing them out. Its grandeur entails taking them in. Hem güneşi mazhar olduğu cilvelerde ve vazifelerde farz-ı muhal olarak fail-i muhtar farz etsek, o derece suhulet ve sürat ve vüs'at içinde zerreden, katreden, deniz yüzünden seyyarata kadar izni ilahi ile öyle işliyor ki, şu tasarrufat-ı azimeyi yalnız bir mahz-ı emirle yapar tahayyül edilebilir. Zerre ile seyyare emrine karşı müsavidirler. Deniz yüzüne verdiği feyzi zerreye de kabiliyetine göre kemale intizamla verir. If, assuming the inconceivable, we assume the sun to be the choosing agent of the reflections and duties that appear on it. Why it is impossible? Because it is not. The sun is not an agent. It does not have agency. It does not have volition. It is not somebody with consciousness, awareness, ability to choose, deciding to do things. No, it is subjugated. It's a servant of God. It is in God's command, right? But let's assume it as if it is a choosing agent and see how we can then conceive, we can interpret these realities that we talked about, right? Assuming the inconceivable, if we assume the sun to be the choosing agent of the reflections and duties that appear on it, since with divine permission, it is operating with such ease, speed, and broad reach on everything from particles and drops to the face of the sea and planets, it can be imagined that it is undertaking those tremendous disposals purely with a command. Right? We look, it's so easy. The sun rises and its light is everywhere. It's heating everything. It is facilitating photosynthesis. It is facilitating imaging and seeing and etc. Everywhere. It is so easy, right? It is as if it is doing all of these things purely with a command. If I wanted to move a chair from the left end of the room to the right end of the room, I would have to get up, walk there, hold the chair, touch it, grab it with my hands, move it with some effort and endeavor and exertion, and put on the other side of the room. This doesn't look like that. It doesn't look like the sun is coming all the way here grabbing the rosebud, putting some light into it with exertion, and then that light is emanating from the rose. No, that's not how it works, right? It is as if the sun is just sitting there. It is just there, and just by shining, which may be, our metaphor for the command, just by shining, as if with a command, it is doing all of these things. The particle and the planet are the same before its command, big or small. The particle or the planet are the same before its command. It encompasses. It's so big and powerful and luminous. Its encompassment is so absolute that the particle and the planet are the same before its command. With perfect order, it gives to the particle the same outpouring benefits that it gives to the face of the sea in accordance with the particle's capacity. İşte sema denizinin yüzünde ziyadar bir kabarcık ve Kadir-i Mutlak'ın Nur isminin cilvesine kesif bir aynecik olan şu güneşin bil müşahede şu hakikatin 3 esasının numunelerine mazhar olduğunu görüyoruz. Elbette güneşin nur ve harareti ilim ve kudretine nispeten toprak gibi kesif hükmünde nurun nur, münevvirin nur, mukaddirin nur olan Zat-ı Zülcelal her şeye ilim ve kudretiyle nihayetsiz yakın ve hazır ve nazır ve eşya ondan gayet uzakta olduğuna hem o derece külfetsiz, mualecesiz, suhuletle işleri yapar ki yalnız mahz-ı emrin sürat ve suhuletiyle icat eder gibi anlaşıldığına hem hiçbir şey cüz-i külli, büyük, küçük, büyük, daire-i kudretinden harice çıkmadığına ve kibriyası ihata ettiğine şuhud derecesinde bir yakîn-i imani ile iman ederiz ve iman etmek gerektir. Now that was the representation, that was the example. Now we will move on to using that cognitive pattern that emerged in our minds from observing the sun and its interaction with the things around it on the face of the earth or the planets, right? We will use that cognitive pattern to understand our Lord. How does our Lord interact with his creation? Thus, we see through observation that the sun, which is a radiant bubble on the face of the sea of the heavens, and a tiny dense mirror to the reflection of the absolutely all-powerful one's name of the light. Right? To this point, we thought of the sun as this tremendous, lofty thing, right? But compared to the rest of the cosmos, compared to God's creation, compared to God's power, what is it? Thus, we see through observation that the sun, what is it? The sun is, which is a radiant bubble on the face of the sea of the heavens, and a tiny, dense mirror to the reflection of the absolutely all-powerful one's name, the light. Right? It is the locus of the manifestation for the samples of the essences of these three realities. So it can be far, it can be close, it happens, God says, kun fayakun, etc., those realities, right? Of course, we believe with a certainty of faith at the level of witnessing, and it is necessary to believe that if that is the case with the sun, we believe that the majestic entity, who is the light of light, and what we know as light here in this world, right? He is the source, and he is the source of many other forms of light. We cannot understand the quiddity of him being the light, right? But this is one of his manifestations. Who is the light of light, the illuminator of light, and the determiner of light, the one who measures light out according to his absolute knowledge and wisdom and will, and designates and distributes it, right? He is the one according to whose will, according to whose wisdom and knowledge, the sun is reflecting some of that light to us, and it is fulfilling so many functions, right? So we believe that the majestic entity who is the light of light, the illuminator of light, and the determiner of light, in comparison to whose knowledge and power, the light and heat. So if you were to think of the light and heat of the sun as, two properties that belong to it, in comparison to whose, God's knowledge and power, the light and heat of the sun is in effect like dense soil, right? Dense soil. Light is so fast, mobile, moves around, subtle. Soil is so dense, can't move, right? Compared to God's knowledge and power, and these are of course still metaphorical. We are talking metaphorically, right? The light and heat of the sun. Now, the light and heat is, it moves fast, it is subtle, etc. But compared to God's knowledge and power, it too is like dense soil, right? So that God is close to, present by, and observant over all things with its knowledge and power. If the sun is able to be present by, close to, and observant over all things with its heat and light, of course we should have no difficulty to believe that God, with his knowledge and power, right, is close to, present by, and observant over all things. We should have no difficulty believing that. We should have certainty, and we do have certainty, that all things are utterly far from him, that it is understood from the ease of the way he does things without burden or endeavor, that it is as if he is bringing things into existence with the speed and ease of pure command alone, and that nothing, whether particular or universal, and small or big, is left outside the circle of his power, his grandeur, right? His grandeur encompasses them all. His grandeur encompasses them all. He is close to, present by, and observant over all things with his knowledge and power. His knowledge and power. His entity is above and beyond space. If we were to say he is, so far over there, perhaps we could still imagine moving in that direction and getting to him at some point, as in the, primitive conceptions of divinity in some animist religions. No, he is above and beyond space. That is the measure of our being far from him. But with his knowledge and power, he is closer to us than our jugular vein, in the way that we understand and have no difficulty understanding that the sunlight goes through a piece of glass. Although it is so far from that piece of glass, we can know and understand that with his knowledge and power, and many other, with the manifestation of many other names and attributes, God is closer to us than our jugular veins. So it all became easy to understand, I suppose, right? God is close to, present by, and observant over all things with his knowledge and power. All things are utterly far from him, right? He does things without burden or endeavor, as if he is bringing things into existence with the speed and ease of pure command alone. And nothing, whether particular or universal, and small or big, is left outside of the circle of his power. We understood this all. We accepted it all. It was easy to grasp when we thought about the example of the sun. Now let's use that cognitive pattern that emerged in our minds to understand and acknowledge and have full conviction and faith that these verses speak the truth. They are articulating tremendous truths about tremendous realities, and all we can do in return is to fall prostrating before our Lord and say, Subhanallah, glory be to you. We usually try to keep these episodes around 1 hour, but we finished this fourth part, the commentary, the explanation about these 4 verses. And if you move to the fifth one, it's going to be a quite lengthy discussion. We will probably just start the discussion and stop there. So instead of that, inshallah, we will stop here and look forward to reading the next set of verses and their commentary by Ustad Bediuzzaman Said Nursi in the next episode. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة. الصلوات. اللهم صل